Baruch haba b'shem Yahuwah. Hi, this is Lou. Today we're going to discover some things about Lazarus, the one they call Lazarus. That's Greek, a form of the Hebrew Alazar. Alazar is a word that means Elohim is my helper, or helps. And there was a man named Alazar, the world knows as Lazarus, and we're going to read a little bit about him real quick and discover some things. But before we do, I wanted to mention there's a couple of places in Scripture where some things were said by Yahusha that are amazing. At Matthew 16, verse 28, and the surrounding context, it talks about some people who were standing right there with him that would not die, would remain alive until he returned. Who is Lazarus, or Alazar, and is he dead? The disciple whom Yahusha loved is what he was referring to himself as, and others too. The world calls him Lazarus. But we know him as John. So in this video, I'm going to refer to the scriptural references as John chapter 11, John chapter 21, and so forth. But his real name isn't John. He never is called John in those references. In what they call the report or the Gospel of John, the writer does not identify himself by any name. You have to deduce who it is. It's important to realize that some of the first Nazarene had as many as 2 or 3 names. So there's a little bit of confusion about that. The person that we know as Lazarus, after he was resurrected, if you read John chapter 11, the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin were after him to kill him. In fact, had a contract out for him, I guess. You could say that. Because he was causing a lot of people to turn to Yahusha. So, anyway, who was he? He became targeted for death after Yahusha raised him from the dead. And he was a young man who was also dearly loved, and the youngest brother of Miriam and Martha. They call him Mary and Martha, who lived in Bethany, which was a small community. So beloved was Alazar that his gospel, or besorah, was the only one without the writer's identity directly referred to, and the only one with the account of the raising of Alazar. If you look at that incident where Yahusha said, in the understanding of Christianity, Lazarus, come forth. I mean, he cried it out. When the Creator calls you out of your tomb, you do it. That's awesome. But before he did, of course, the shortest verse in the scriptures is, Yahusha wept. He loved that man, that young man. Now, the writer of the book we call John only refers to himself by a phrase, the Talmud, or disciple, whom Yahusha loved. And this is the way we can know who it was that is the writer, by deduction. He's the younger brother of Miriam and Martha, residents of Bethany, was very close to Jerusalem. Anyway, Bethany means poor house, or it can mean house of figs. Alazar was the Talmud whom Yahusha loved, and was charged or ordered to look after Yahusha's mother as he hung from the stake. So that's an interesting thing too. He was so trusted by Yahusha that he gave charge to him from the stake. Take care of my mother. Miriam was one of the women who was right there. That was Alazar's brother. And she was also one of the 3 women that ran from the empty tomb to report to Yahusha's closest Talmudim, or disciples, one of whom was her own brother Alazar. And it's referred to as the Talmud, the one Yahusha loved. See John, or Yehukanan, 20, verse 2. Abiding in Yahusha's word, we're truly his Talmudim. Anyway, the interesting thing is, at Matthew 16:28, he must have been there because he said, some who are standing here will not taste death until he returns. And that's referred to again at Yehukanan, or John, chapter 21. I think it's around verse 22. And I think I can read that real quickly for you. One of the interesting things about the John chapter 21 is it's after Yahusha has resurrected, and they're fishing all night, and they get this huge catch of fish after they are ordered to by this man that's on the beach. And anyway, they come out of the boat, they have this huge catch, and they realize it's Yahusha. And Lazarus is right there with him, and Kepha, or Peter, is he's questioning Yahusha and hearing from Yahusha and asking questions, and Yahusha's asking him questions. Kepha, do you love me? You remember that? And he said, well, of course I do. Feed my lambs. Well, as they're walking away from the breakfast, the resurrected Yahusha is explaining to Kepha, or Peter, how he's going to die. That's the topic of the discussion. And right behind them is this young man we know as John. Never identifies him, but he's the disciple whom Yahusha loved. That's the identification. And he says, what about him? How's he going to die, basically? He'd already died, and Yahusha resurrected him. But then Yahusha said something to him that was very interesting. He said, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what's that to you? You follow me. And because of this, the rumor spread among the believers that this Talmud, John, or Lazarus, would not die. But Yahusha did not say he would not die. He only said, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? So that's very good. Then he says, this is the disciple, or Talmud, who testifies of these things and who wrote them down so that we know his testimony is true. His identity is a little bit covered, but obscured. But we know that it was the disciple whom Yahusha loved. He's the only one that was mentioned with that terminology. So it was the younger brother of Miriam and Martha.